Fall in love with 252 exclusive offers on the Citroën range at Hugo Luna Motors today. Explore our impressive collection of Citroën cars and vans, where advanced comfort, style, safety and reliability all come together. Order your 252 today and take advantage of low-rate finance, a €500 deposit contribution and avail of a free home charger. Book your test drive today at hugolunamotors.ie. Citroën. For everyone, like no one.
Citroën. Country Life on Midlands 103. Brought to you by W. Orshaw, Burlington Business Park, Tullamore. Supplier of New Holland's tractors in the Midlands. worshaw.ie.
Now, good evening and welcome to Country Life here on Midlands 103. It's MJ Clery bringing you the latest from the worlds of food, farming and agri-business from the Midlands and further afield here for the next hour on the station. And thank you all for joining me as always. It's actually our last programme of 2025. Christmas is falling, as we know, in 8 days' time. So we are not on air next week as it is Christmas Eve. So we're off air for a couple of weeks and we'll be back to you in 2026 as always. Looking forward to the break, I must say, as I hope you are too. And look, we'll have a little rundown of 25 throughout the course of the programme. But always I have intention to speak about these things and then the time gets away from us. So if we don't get a chance to say it at the end of the hour, I hope you all have a well-deserved break over the Christmas period and just take a few days of R&R and relaxing, especially the very, very busy dairy farmers out there who have cows dried off. And this is the one time of the year where you can relax for a few days, and isn't it lovely to have the opportunity to do so. So to ensure to do that, because before we know it, it'll be spring 2026 and it'll be busy again for everybody across the board. So to take that on board. Now this evening we are covering lots of different areas as always. Pensions are the topic of conversation later. So if you have an employee on your farm, then this will affect you. It's called the Auto Enrolment Pension Scheme and it starts on the 1st of January in a couple of weeks' time. It's obligatory for employers if you don't already have a pension scheme set up for your employees. And John Brady from IFAC will chat to us about this. And indeed, a little on pensions in general. Look, it has been a good year financially across the board in agriculture in 25, and important to put money into a pension for that longer term planning. And that's something John will be speaking about as well. Now, we've covered anaerobic digestion plenty of times on the programme here over the last few years, especially in the last year we've heard more and more about it, but it's always hard to find actual figures on the area and whether it will pay farmers to supply silage or slurry to these plants. Teagasc have just carried out a study on exactly that, the economics of supplying to a biomass plant, and Fiona Thorne from Teagasc will chat to me with all the figures a little bit later here on the programme. Really interesting study that, to put a lot of work into it, and it breaks down exactly what you can get paid if you're supplying either silage or slurry to one of these plants. Now, towards the end of the hour, Phelim O'Neill from the Irish Farmers Journal is going to join me to look back at 2025. I have 2015 written down here in front of me, so he's definitely not going to look back that far, but 2025 from a market's perspective, and indeed towards 2026, so just where prices could go next year. That's the question we put to Phelim later in the programme. Now, as always, text me here 083 30 10 103. Happy to put anything to our listeners and indeed our guests this evening. And to start, it's that time of the year again where it is Tullamore Tractor Run. And it does not feel like a year since this man was sitting in front of me, PJ Lynham from PJ Lynham Tractor Parts here in Tullamore. PJ, many thanks for popping into studio this evening. As I said, a full 12 months since I was speaking to you. Quick year.
Hard to believe, MJ, and thank you again for having me in here today. So, we're looking forward to this year, the 18th annual tractor run. And so each year in the last number of years, we were collecting up to 50,000. That's our aim every year. And we've gone over it this year. We handed over 52,000 to Dóchas Offaly Cantor Support Group, which is a marvellous achievement. So we're setting out again to achieve that and more if we can at all. So the Tullamore Tractor Run itself, as you said, it has become one of the biggest in the country, and it has grown in popularity over the years. So people come from all over the Midlands, they come to see this spectacle, and it really is a spectacle. It is one of the main calendar events of the year in Tullamore, and it's also a great family day out with parents who bring their children, and there is so much on display where you have all makes of size of tractors, lorries and cars and bicycles and everything. These people, while coming to support the tractor run, also come to shop in Tullamore. And the retail shops, the restaurant, the bars, the coffee shops and all, they all benefit from this event. When you have a big crowd like that, something has to be right. So the participants themselves, of course, they come from all over the Midlands. They travel from bordering counties in the Midlands, such as the Westmeath and Kildare and Laois and Tipperary and Galway. We always take note when to do the registration of what part of the country to come from. And we do be surprised every year the amount of people who come from so far away as Galway and that. It's unbelievable. So we don't forget those people that have spent a lot of time in getting ready their tractors, their lorries and cars. A lot of time and effort goes into their vehicles in having them looking in pristine condition for the run. We really, really appreciate and acknowledge their efforts and time. So the registration will take place in the Market Square. And that's on the morning of the tractor run, which is Sunday the 28th of December. And we are asking all drivers to go down to the registration office when they arrive. The office is in the Harbour Bar, and also in Cohen's Yard. We have a registration office. It will be set up there, and registration fees is €25. And that will entitle them to a beautiful breakfast roll, and tea and coffee that is sponsored by John Levy Centra in Henry Street. And so that will be served in the old Harbour Bar by our tea ladies there. And also we have a website set up over the last few years, and again is you can still donate on the day and donate online as well. So we have a website set up where you can also book online to register. And there is a list of our sponsors and past events and photos and videos and various different things that you can look at on the website. It's a really interesting site to look at. And to go there is www.tullamoretractorrun.com. So, and also on the day, there will be hats and mugs on sale that morning. So, and don't forget, of course, the famous auction that night in Tullamore Harbour Bar. Our auctioneer, of course, is Gordon Cobb. And again, we have lots of valuable items for sale. It really is a very successful night. We always take in around €20,000 there on a night. So we're still looking for items, of course. And of course, the valuable ones are the rugby tickets, the football tickets, the hurling tickets. And, you know, we're open to anybody who will hand in stuff for the auction, because it's so easy to sell on the night, and especially hoteliers and restaurant owners, vouchers and all that sort of stuff is very saleable on the night. So it's always a great night. The spirit is always high, and it creates a huge atmosphere for the auction. So as I said, last year we took in over 20,000, so we're hoping to make that again. It's always a great fun night there. So we also on Sunday the 21st of December, in the Dunstores Bridge Centre, we'll have the hamper draw there as well. Tickets will be on sale there. I'll be there myself with other lads, and we'll take any queries that you need to be answered. We'll be there to do that. And also, if you want to call us, or you can call Mick Waters, our chairman, on 087 402 3873. Now, the whole work of this and what we're all about is, of course, to make money, to raise funds for Offaly Cancer Support Group. So there is a massive effort from both town and country, as we know, over the long numbers of years that we have been doing this. Huge effort by everybody. And they are, of course, a fantastic organisation. They offer a great, high-quality, holistic services to people throughout the Midlands and those families who are affected by cancer. So due, of course, to the increase in demand for their services, it puts a strain on their financial outlays, and therefore it's really, they really depend on charity groups such as ours for financial support. So to today, I was just looking ahead there this evening, we have raised nearly almost €500,000 so far for cancer care since we started in 2008. We have basically the same hard-working committee there since 2008, and we are very grateful to all the support and assistance that we get from everybody, their families and friends and so on. So, and then even on the day itself, we have over 50 people working on the day, all voluntary. This is a massive community commitment by all. So I'll just give you, MJ, the route itself, because everybody loves to know where we're going this year. So we're starting, of course, in Harbour Street and then on to William Street, High Street, and left then at the roundabout heading for Clonminch, on to Derrybeg, on to Derryclure, and then we take the left in Killy heading to Newtown, and we take the next left after that for the lorries because of the bridge there in Newtown. So the lorries then go a step further to take the next left, and then out the road and then back home the Mealhan Road. So all lorries are asked to do that. So that's the lorries and cars and tractors, and of course they're all welcome. Whatever you have, bring it on to the day. And then the last few years we had a little ceremony. Of course, we just cut the ribbon and like the official opening. And so we in 2023 we were honoured to have Mr. Ronnie Colton, and then in 24, which was last year, we were very honoured to have John Johelian, and this year now we have Mr. Willie Shaw to do the honours. So a big thank you to everybody, to all the community and to all the people, and especially to all our sponsors who are Offaly County Council, the Gardaí, of course, play a big role in this because they make it run smoothly for us, and the Tullamore Tribune, and of course yourself, MJ, Midlands 103, and all our family and friends who help out. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, PJ. Really, look, fantastic rundown there. You've gone through it all. The only thing I'll add to it all, PJ, as you were speaking, just looking through pictures, I was looking through the website here as well, and it did cross my mind. It's the 18th annual tractor run. And look, obviously, tractor runs are very popular now, but 18 years ago, maybe not so much. Where you were kind of a pioneer of tractor runs. Who thought of it originally? Who had the first idea for this?
Well, we were always into vintage, and we were talking like runs only started, I suppose, 20 years ago as such. And how we started was we talked about doing a run from Doro and Kilbeggan and that sort of thing. So we met up one night on a cold winter's night in the Harbour Bar. Our chairman, Mickey Waters, asked us all to come down and have a chat and see what would we do. And someone suggested that we'd run the Tullamore tractor run. And then, of course, there was criticism, said, you can't run a tractor run through the town. But we did, and we made a decision on doing that. And it was the greatest decision we ever made because we had the backing of the town, the backing of the business and everything that went with it. And it just took off from there. I remember the first year in 2008, we took in 32,000, which was a phenomenal amount of money for the first year. And it was in Cohen's Yard, actually. And then we went through, we never left the date, we always went on the 28th. But the time of the year is another thing, MJ, because, people are on their holidays and they want to get out for the day and they want something to go to. And of course, the 28th then is very shortly after Christmas, as you know, and people have time, of course, to get ready as well and something to do. So it kind of grew from there, MJ. And of course, then we started to do the auction too. And, I could talk all night about the auction and the, we always raise funds for cancer care, and then we in 2014 then we started to do the fundraising for DOCAs, because the first one was the Veranda Fund, I remember, just to be called, was the extension on the cancer unit in the hospital. So that was finished in around 2014. So then we focused on DOCA's Offaly Cancer Support Group, and we've been there ever since.
Well, PJ, what we'll say to you is we wish you all the best. You're doing great work, as you said, so many volunteers involved there, and the website is fantastic. TullamoreTractorRun.com has all the details, has everything about it. But look, Sunday 28th of December 2025, €25 entry, funds going to DOCA's Cancer Support Group, and we wish you all the best as usual. Many thanks for popping into us, PJ.
Thank you very much, MJ. Thank you.
PJ Lynham there, as we said, Tullamore Tractor Run. Now we're going to go to a break, and coming up after that break, we're going to be speaking to John Brady from IFAC. It's going to be all about pensions, and if you have an employee on your farm, you need to listen because things are changing on the 1st of January 2026. Stay tuned.
Country Life on Midlands 103.
With W.R. Shaw, family owned and serving the Midlands since 1982, we're Ireland's largest independent agri-dealer, specialising in New Holland tractors and parts. With over 40 years' experience, we provide top quality sales, service and support. Visit W.R. Shaw in Tullamore and Carlow or online at wrshaw.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Country Life here on Midlands 103. Now we're moving on to pensions, and specifically if you have an employee on your farm, this is going to be of interest to you as things are changing on the 1st of January. John Brady from IFAC joins us. John, many thanks for taking my call this evening here on the programme.
Pleasure.
John, can you give us a little bit of background on this, please? What is occurring on the 1st of January coming up?
Okay, thanks for having me on, MJ. On the 1st of January, there's a new pension savings scheme being introduced by the government called auto-enrolment. And the reason for that is quite simply, not enough people in Ireland have been saving towards retirement. Currently there's a gap of about between 700,000 and 800,000 workers in Ireland who have no pension provision at all. And that means that you're going to be facing up to a state pension at 66, which is about 15,000 a year, when the current average earnings in the Midlands is about 38,000 to 40,000 a year. So there's a significant drop there. The second reason for looking at it is that we have an ageing population, the demographics are changing, and people that are paying in PRSI at the moment are actually funding pensions for current pensioners. And with that in mind, that people are living longer, then it's not really sustainable.
And the auto-enrolment then, John, let's look at it from two perspectives. Firstly, let's look at it from the farmer, the sole trader who has no employees on his or her farm. And then let's look at it from the farmer who possibly, maybe incorporated, might have a partnership, but has an employee. Firstly, the sole trader who is working on his or her own farm. Does this affect that individual?
No. I mean, if you're self-employed, you're not impacted by auto-enrolment at all. It's only applicable for employees between the ages of 23 and 60 who are earning 20,000 a year or more and have no pension in place through payroll.
And then the farmer then who has an employee, and that employee is between the age of 23 and 60, and that employee has no other form of pension. I suppose let's get down to the brass tacks, John. How much is this going to cost the farmer then per annum?
Okay, well, it's actually going to be on a rising scale. So the first 3 years is 1.5% gross salary paid by the employer, also paid by the employee, and the government will give a top-up of 0.5%. So for every €3 that an employee pays in, the government pays in an extra euro. But the 1.5% that we're talking about there will increase through time, and after 10 years, it's going to rise up to 6% from the employer, 6% from the employee, and 2% from the government.
Now, I should be doing my maths here off the top of my head, but I might make a mistake. 1.5%, John, say an individual's earning €40,000. What are we talking about per annum then?
You're looking at, per annum, you're looking at the employer paying in €600. The employee pays in 600 and the government pays in 200. But one positive, I suppose, for the employer is that the employer can claim tax relief on that €600.
Okay, so talk to me about the tax refund there. Let's say that employer has a tax bill of €10,000 per annum. What way does that 600 work against the 10,000?
Well, what would happen is that the 600, if he pays 600 a year, and then he has 20% tax relief or 40% depending on his personal circumstances. So the 600 would end up costing him 480 if he's a 20% tax rate payer, or it would cost 360 if he's paying tax at 40%.
Yeah, so look, they're not huge figures, John, to be honest. Realistically, there's not going to be many farm operative earning, anything much more than 40,000. If we see the average kind of salary for a farm operative is probably more 35, 37 and a half. So, it's not an enormous amount of money, but I'm just looking at it then from the employee perspective. So let's say you're a young farm operative, 20, maybe even in your late 30s or early 40s, and you have no pension whatsoever. and then suddenly you're getting this amount per annum going in, it's not going to stack up to an awful amount of money over a period of time. Or am I looking at it incorrectly? Is it?
No, you're absolutely right, MJ. I mean, what really I would suggest is that this is a great way for people to start thinking about pensions. It's something that people really need to start thinking about earlier rather than later. And the earlier you start contributing to a pension, the better off you'll find yourself when you get to retirement. I would suggest that anybody who is interested in talking about pensions seeks financial advice, because the auto-enrolment may be suitable for some people, but for others it might be better. And you're right, if you're somebody who's in their 30s, for example, you probably want to be putting more than 1.5% into your pension every year.
Yeah, let's talk about pensions then on a broader scale, John. So we often hear about the tax benefits of paying into your pension, but it goes over a lot of people's heads, myself included, and I hear it and I forget it and I don't really understand it. And we hear if you have a tax bill, it makes sense to pay into your pension. Let's break it down, real straightforwardly first, John. Let's say, for example, a farmer had a tax bill of, go back to that figure, €10,000, just to make it nice and straightforward, back a couple of months ago, and they can pay some money into their pension. How does it work, and what are the logistics mechanics of it?
Okay, basically it's seen as a business expense. So if you have a tax bill of 10,000 and you are paying 40% tax, then if you pay 10,000 into a pension, it reduces your tax bill by 4,000.
So that 4,000 then can be deemed as an expense on your P&L account, essentially. It can go out the same as if you're paying a supplier or whatnot.
Well, the 10,000 goes down as an expense, so you get tax relief on it. So it's no longer profit then, is it? So it's been paid out, so therefore you've made less profits, therefore you pay less tax. And
then there's also the aspect of, as you said, the government earlier on, the government paying in some money. So if you pay in that amount, I suppose it's deemed that because it's coming off your tax bill, it's deemed that the government are helping you, if you will.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, the government don't necessarily want to be looking after you when you get to your old age. So they help you along the way by giving you encouragement to save into the pension fund, by giving you tax relief on contributions, whether it's at 20%, 40% or 12.5% if you're incorporated.
And the pension funds then that you have your options to pay into, John, again, people, I suppose, are quite conscious of funds and of pensions when they hear shares. With bank shares in Ireland years ago, a lot of people put a lot of money into bank shares, and we all know where they went. And unfortunately, people lost, their pensions, lost a lot of money. People are a bit conscious of this. Do they need to be conscious of this? Do they need to be have a little bit of trepidation when they're looking at pension funds, or are they quite safe?
Well, what I would suggest is that if you take appropriate financial advice, MJ, then people like myself and my colleagues would be able to sit down and discuss your own particular individual investment attitude to risk. But generally speaking, if you're looking at a 20 to 30 year timeline before you retire, you probably can afford to take some risk with the investments, because you will outride any of the market falls and rises. These things go up and down all the time. But what we say is that everyone's different, and I would suggest that if you're sitting down investing money for 10, 20 years, then you can afford to take a bit of risk with it, because the alternative is leaving it sitting on deposit. The inflation is eating away at the value of your money, and just to put it in perspective, if you had €100,000 sitting in the bank and inflation was eating away at it for the next 10 years at 3%, the real buying power of that 100,000 is about 77.
Yeah, it does make it makes it very real when you see figures like that, John, doesn't it? You need to have your money working for you in some way, shape or form. I suppose farmers, John, then, look, you're with IFAC and customers are farmers, and farmers may not know a lot about different aspects, but they know lots about farming, and we have seen farmers buying land over the last number of years, and it's proven to be one of the best investments going.
Absolutely, that's right. And the thing is as well, we come across a lot of clients who are sitting with funds in the bank, and they're maybe waiting for a piece of land to come up near to them. One of the things that you find is that they may be sitting in that money for the next 10 years, and that money's doing nothing for them, whilst the price of land, as you know, is going up all the time,
Yeah, I suppose if you had the money working for you, you can always pull it then and use it for something else. It is one, though, as you say, John, it's really important on this, like really good financial advice on this now, like somebody or people or an organisation who really know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, it's key to everyone, and not just for farmers, but for everyone out there. Is a case that if you're looking at your scenario with regards to retirement planning or savings or investments, it really does pay to get appropriate financial advice.
Yeah, very good. Many thanks for speaking to me here on the programme, John. We must have you back in 26 again with more financial advice, because you're somebody who knows, you know what you're talking about. There's no question about that. But it's an area that more people need to start thinking about a little bit more. And I suppose the more we talk about it, the more people might shoot up and say, look, my pension isn't where it should be and I need appropriate financial planning. So we're going to say many thanks for joining me, John, and we'll speak to you again here on Country Life.
You're very welcome. Thank you, MJ.
That was John Brady there from IFAC, and that auto-enrolment scheme will affect you if you have an employee. But look, the figures for the first 3 years, they're not huge really, so I don't think it's anything to get overly worked up about. But the old age pension, 15,000 per year, average income 40,000 per year. Yeah, everybody just does need to keep an eye on the future, and your pension. There are good tax benefits for paying into it. And then look, as we said, you might be doing something else. You might have maybe bought a property in the past, and you could be looking at paying down a loan on that and having rental income from it as your pension. You could be looking at possibly, if you're a landowner, then leasing land on a tax-free basis and using that as pension income, whatever the case may be. But just to be thinking about it, and not to be stuck in later years. Now, coming up after the break, we're going to be talking to Fiona Thorne from Teagasc. They did a really interesting study on biomethane production in Ireland, and we're going to hear all about it in just a moment.
Surprise yourself with the all-new 252 Suzuki range at Hugo Luna Motors. Suzuki's Japanese quality is ready to stand out and make you feel proud every time you drive. Whether it's the zippy Swift or the adventure-ready S-Cross, enjoy 0% finance, handy tech, safety features and great value as standard, all wrapped in the fun and efficiency of a hybrid. The only tough part? Choosing which car to drive. Visit HugoLunaMotors.ie today, where we're not just different, we're good different. Finance subject to status, terms and conditions apply.
Country Life on Midlands 103.
Brought to you by W.R. Shaw, where New Holland isn't just a brand, it's our passion. For over 40 years, we've been Ireland's trusted name for New Holland tractors, parts and farm machinery. Whether you need new, used or ex-hire tractors, we've got you covered. WRShaw.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Country Life here in Midlands 103. Now, we are moving on to biomethane, and a very interesting study recently conducted by Teagasc. Fiona Thorne is joining us from Teagasc now to speak about it. Fiona, many thanks for taking my call this evening.
MJ, thanks for having me on. Delighted to be here.
You're more than welcome, Fiona. It's there's a mouthful when we come to the heading here. Farm level economic, environmental and transport modelling of alternative feedstock solutions for regional anaerobic digestion plants in Ireland. There we go. And on top of it then, it's 131 pages. So now, Fiona, you have about 6-7 minutes to tell us all about it. So,
super. We're going to synopsise all that title and those 100 odd pages.
We're going to bring it back. Look, Fiona, we've talked about biomethane loads here in the programme, especially in the last year. But I suppose, look, for the real uninitiated, for people who have no idea what this is about, just in a word, what is the process here in relation to agriculture?
Yeah. So what we're talking about, when you hear the term anaerobic digestion, essentially what it is it's a technology, which I describe it as like the metal stomach of a cow, but it's metal in this instance, and you feed a feedstock into it. The study that we conducted over the last 4 years was looking at using feedstocks from agriculture to feed it. Now, you can use other feedstocks, but we were primarily looking at ag-based feedstocks, so the farmer supplying in slurry and grass silage into a regional AD plant. And what we did then was we looked at, well, would it make sense for the farmer who is currently rearing cattle or rearing sheep, or a dairy farmer or a tillage farmer, would it make economic sense for him to supply those feedstocks into that regional AD plant? And then moving on further from that, we didn't just look at the economics, but we looked at the social sustainability and the willingness of farmers to supply those feedstocks, and also the environmental implications at the farm level of looking at supplying those feedstocks into these regional AD plants. But like at a very basic level, MJ, what we're talking about is the metal stomach of a cow and feeding in feedstocks one end and getting out biogas, biomethane out the far end, and getting digestate out of that process, which the farmer can then return onto the land that they've already produced the feedstocks off. So hopefully I've tried to summarise the process as succinctly as I can with that.
Yeah, perfect, Fiona. So for this study that you did then, I presume you surveyed an amount of farmers. How many and how long did it take? How long were you at this?
Yeah, so this study is going on for the last 4 years. It was funded by the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland in conjunction with Gas Networks Ireland. And what they were interested in was looking at the sustainability at a regional level of these AD plants. And we used the Teagasc National Farm Survey to look at the economic, environmental and social implications of it. The social implications part of it, the social willingness of farmers to engage in it. What happened there was 2 years ago, all our recorders from the National Farm Survey surveyed all farmers within the farm survey, which is about 1,000 farms on an annual basis. So went out and asked those farmers, would they be willing to supply slurry or grass silage into the AD plants? And then we analysed that data back to see was there the willingness or the appetite at farm level to engage in this process. But in a nutshell, a sample of about 1,000 farms, which is weighted up then to represent the full population of agriculture, so cattle, sheep, tillage and dairy farms represented within the sample.
And in relation to that, the willingness to supply, what was the result of that, Fiona? What was there a percentage or how did it work?
Yeah. So if we're to reach the targets that government has set for us, which is this big target by 2030 of 5.7 terawatt hours of biomethane, and to reach that target, we need about 150, 200 of these plants throughout the country. And we reckon that we need probably about 15% of farmers to engage in it. And from our study, 17% of farmers said that they would be very willing to supply slurry and grass silage into the plants. So if we think that each of those farmers actually go ahead and engage in the process, from the survey that we did, it's showing that there is a willingness at farm level. Not a very high willingness, like it's less than 1 in 5 farmers saying that they were very willing to engage in it. But to reach the targets that we've set ourselves, that survey would show that there is enough willingness out there. Now, of course, we're not talking about price points or what the economics of it are in that situation. We abstracted away from that when we asked the questions at farm level. We said, look, if you got to go in price for silage, would you be willing to engage? And less than 1 in 5 farmers said that they would be willing.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about price in 1 second. I'm just wondering, you may not know the answer to this now, Fiona, but if a farmer exported slurry to one of these plants, is that the same as exporting it off as holding from a nitrate perspective?
Yeah, good question. So one of the big caveats with this is that if a farmer is in derogation, he can't essentially re-import that digestate back onto the farm.
I thought so.
So that is a problem. And in our analysis on the economic side of it, we have to exclude out those farmers that were in derogation. So that is a sticking point the way the legislation is stated at the moment. Derogation farmers can't engage in it, you know.
Yeah, but if you're not in derogation, if you're under, say you're under 170, look, it's not going to, the question kind of answers itself then. It doesn't really matter because you bring the digestate back, you're still going to be under the 170.
That's your issue.
Yeah.
That's your issue, you see. Look, we don't have many of these plants out there at the moment, but the working business model that we're thinking that will evolve over time is that if a farmer supplies slurry or supplies the silage into the AD plant, then on the other end of it he'll receive that digestate back. So you're putting the feedstock in one side and getting a valuable fertiliser back on the other side, you know.
Yeah, let's talk about price, Fiona, because this is the one that, as I said, spoken many times on this from representatives from the industry and whatnot, and it's always very hard to nail down a price. But obviously, thinking of this from a farmer perspective, price of silage has to be where it's linked to. But I suppose you're going to want a little bit more because you're going to possibly have to travel to the plant, and then you're maybe going to have to travel back to get the digestate back and whatnot. So, is there an idea on price point of what farmers can be paid?
Yeah. So look, we don't. When we started off doing this study, I was saying to you there earlier, MJ, that there's not many of these working plants out there. So what we had to do was work on assumptions of what price point might prevail. Now, the farm level economics piece of this work was the first piece of work that we kicked off with, that we set up a model that can be used over time. It's a model that can be available to farmers to look at what the relative economics would be if they converted what they were doing at the moment into supplying silage. The price points that we looked at the time was between 30, 35 and 40 euro a tonne. But there's a big, big caveat on that. As I said, this was the first piece of research that we did in this study, and we were comparing it against data from the National Farm Survey, which was from 2018 to 2020. Now, based on that, at 30, 35 and 40 euro a tonne, dry stock farmers, our sheep and our cattle farmers, if they got 35 and probably 40 euro a tonne, they would need, because of that inertia and not willing to change system, it was probably that tipping point of about 40 euro a tonne that would be needed for the silage at that point. But we all know that the cost of producing silage as a result of the increase in fertiliser prices in particular has increased significantly from 2020, and likewise on the other side, the economics of cattle rearing, cattle finishing and sheep systems have altered dramatically sort of in the last 24 months. So that piece of the study is something that we want to update, and it's something we're starting on a new project on the 1st of January where we'll update that piece of analysis. But between 35, 40 euro a tonne looked to be the sweet spot when you were going back looking at data from 2020. But yeah, that research needs to be updated at this stage.
Yeah, the proof of the pudding will be in the price, Fiona, won't it, really? Because at the end of the day, farmers are getting paid enough, they'll do it, and if they're not, they won't. And I suppose, there's very clever people involved in this industry, and there's funds getting involved in the biomethane industry globally. And, this isn't the first time that has come up, I suppose, and they are aware of this. But these are big businesses trying to make money, so the less they pay for the silage and the slurry, the more profit they're going to make. But yet, if they don't pay enough, farmers aren't going to do it. So it's a fine balancing act.
It is. And when those type of questions come up at farm level, I always say to farmers, the most important thing that you can do is sit down with, whether it's a pen and paper or whether it's your laptop computer, to sit down and know what your own costs of production are. So using tools like the Profit Monitor, which is available from Teagasc, working with your local Teagasc advisor to know, look at what would be the cost of production of producing a tonne of silage. Now, something else that I should say there, we're probably not talking about just perennial ryegrass silage in this situation. To meet sustainability credentials associated with these AD plants, we're probably looking at perennial ryegrass and clover swards, and if not, multi-species swards in this situation. So knowing what your costs of production are, knowing what those costs are like compared to the profitability of your existing system is just paramount. So doing that homework is so important.
Fiona, I'm going to say many thanks to you, and an epic performance there to fit 131 pages into about 8.5 minutes. We could speak to you for a full hour on this, no problem. No doubt I'm going to be speaking to you again on this area, because it's a growth industry and it's going to be around and it's not going anywhere. And you are the lady in the know. So many thanks for joining me on the programme this evening, Fiona. And as I said, we'll speak to you again. Thanks, MJ. Delighted to speak to you tonight. Fiona Thorne there from Teagasc. And as I said, look, growth area, it's going to be around forever, basically. Look, these plants, once they're built, they're going to be there. We had Carbon AMS on not too long ago here on the programme. They have a plant up in County Meath, I think, off the top of my head. And that's in production at the moment, and they'll be taking grass, I think, by the end of next year is the plan. And these are going to be popping up. Look, it's all going to come down to the cost and to the price that's being paid, but it is something we are going to be talking more and more about, because the government have huge targets for these, 150 to 200 of these plants to be built. Look, by 2030 that's not going to happen, but to be built in the coming years. So as I said, we are going to be talking about it a lot here on the programme. Now, coming up after the break, Phelim O'Neill from the Irish Farmers Journal is going to have his crystal ball, and he's going to give it a nice polish, and he's going to tell us what milk prices, what beef prices will be in 2026. So stay tuned for that.
Country Life on Midlands 103.
With W.R. Shaw. Looking for the best in farm machinery? We've been supplying top quality New Holland tractors and parts and providing service since 1982. Our expert team is here to keep your farm running smoothly, with branches in Tullamore and Carlow. Visit wrshaw.ie today.
And you're welcome back to Country Life here on Midlands 103. Now, we are joined by Phelim O'Neill from the Irish Farmers Journal. Phelim, many thanks for taking my call this evening.
Good evening, MJ.
Phelim, let's look back at 2025 for a moment before we look forward to 2026. But from we'll talk about beef and dairy. I suppose look the two big ones here in Ireland, and beef and dairy 2025. How would you sum them up, Phelim? You're dealing with the markets all the time there in the paper. What would you say?
Well, I think if you take the year as a whole, MJ, you'd have to say it was a pretty perfect year for both categories. The one exception, 2025, of course, we shouldn't forget, just because of smaller sectors, the tillage sector, they, despite the weather being reasonably favourable in most areas, it's been a very tough year in them and prices have been poor. But back to dairy and beef. For the dairy, if you'd stopped the year about the end of September, I think you would have said it was a perfect year because it was good enough growing conditions. There was a few areas of the country, maybe the grass was a bit tight over spells, but by and large it recovered, and there was good quantity and quality silage harvested as well. So buffer feed was available when required. Since the end of September, of course, dairy markets had been on the turn since the middle of the year, and that found its way back to the farm gate milk price and milk check then in September. And really it's been a downwards path since then. And that, I suppose, means that what had been a very, very good year, and still is a good year overall, it finishes in a bit of a downer for the dairy sector. For the sheepmen, then, it has been a fairly steady year. Prices have been good without being spectacular. Again, a big drop in numbers this year, down another 15% roughly after a big fall last year as well. So, it would make you worry about our sheep meat sector that I suppose the price is reasonably strong over the past couple of years, but at the same time, it's not enough maybe to keep farmers involved and invested in it. Beef, then, it has been an exceptional year, I think is the only way to put it, MJ. It's one of the few years, certainly that I struggle to remember a year that's been anything like it. There's been definitely patches of years that were very good, and people that had bought cattle at certain times managed to sell them in a rising market and got away very well. But overall this year, and the suckler farmer in particular, who is, of course, needs every euro that they can get for the work that they put in to rearing that cow, it's been good all the way through. And people that bought dry stock in the spring generally got away terribly well as the year went on. And we're finishing the year at record prices, and I'm expecting that we'll see record value in exports whenever Board B release their figures for 2025 in a couple of weeks' time. So just a little bit of a cloud appearing in the beef sky there, maybe, MJ, just to finish on that. The last couple of weeks we've seen prices coming back quite sharply at the factories. Factories would say that the market has died a bit now. We'd be hoping that that's maybe a case of the big English supermarkets having their Christmas supplies all bought and they're taking a breather, if you like, and hopefully that it'll resume again a stronger footing after Christmas. But I suppose the reality of life is we've had a very, very good increase all through this year. Very much fewer numbers down. Will be a couple of 100,000 head less down, which is not particularly good news. But, I think if we had started the year and someone had predicted we had the finishing prices that we have, I think most farmers would have taken the arm off you.
Yeah, and speaking of beef then, Phelim, obviously we can't speak of it without the Mercosur deal, and we see the Farmers Journal tomorrow leading with Mercosur deal faces rural revolt. Over 10,000 people protesting in Brussels. Into 2026, what can we expect in relation to Mercosur, Phelim?
Well, and if we had been having this conversation a month ago, I would have said to you it's basically a done deal, that they have their ducks lined up on a row to get the votes in the European Council. But it has begun to unravel over the past number of days, the past number of weeks now. Whether the Farmers Journal investigation on Brazil by my colleague Adam Woods and our cameraman Philip, whether that has driven it or not, I don't know. But the reality is it's nowhere near the done deal now that it seemed to be. And in fact, the reports today coming out of Brussels are that both Italy and France, as things stand, are against it. The decision was to be this in the next couple of days at the Danish presidency of the European Council. And that now looks like it might be deferred until January. And there's talk that they're not very happy with this in the South American countries, that if it's deferred to January, that, it might just slip altogether and might go. Now, very much in the balance at the moment, and it could be a bit of last minute. There's very few deals done in Brussels that don't go right down to the wire to the very, very end. It could still get there, but at the same time, there's an element of doubt now that certainly wasn't there a few weeks ago.
Well, you mentioned your colleagues, Phelim, Adam, and indeed your cameraman there. It definitely didn't do it any harm anyway. There's no question about that. It was a fantastic piece of investigative journalism that we just, hadn't been familiar with previous to that.
It was a very, very comprehensive piece of work, and Adam and Philip and their colleague from the Irish Farmers Association as well covered, I think it was 3,000 kilometres over a relatively short space of time, and picked up some fabulous photographs and some fabulous video as well as what they found and reported on in print. So I think the three men absolutely would have provided some service to Irish farmers over the course of that trip.
Absolutely, Phelim. We've about a minute left, so I'm just going to ask you, just dairy, and look, it's our big hitter here in Irish agriculture. 2026 prices have taken a dip and taken a hit here towards the end of 25. What's your prediction for 26?
Certainly, talking to our dairy editor just this week, wouldn't be confident of an immediate recovery in the new year. And I suppose, when you look at it, if you're going to have to take a bit of a drop in a milk price, this is the time of year to do it when the output's low. But as we get into the spring again, get into peak supply season, you'll be hoping that there will be a bounce back in prices. And, the dairy commodities, butter and cheese in particular, there's very, very high stocks everywhere in the world. There's been very, very high production in 2025, not just in Ireland. And that has meant that we're carrying big stocks into the new year. And there's no immediate expectation of a quick return in dairy markets. So what we had been hoping for at the start, maybe that was a few weeks of a blip, certainly looks like it's going to stretch into a few months. Longer term, of course, and if you're taking a 5 and a 10-year view of these things, the world is going to be consuming more dairy. And whilst dairy production can be and has been ramped up this year, the reality is that there should be a strong long-term market. But of course, that's not much consolation to farmers that have bills to pay, come into the first quarter of 2026. So be a little bit cautious on the dairy side, and indeed, I suppose if I might add in there, beef side will be watching very, very closely now what the market does in the immediate aftermath following Christmas here. Other years we tended to see a bit of a bounce upwards at that time of year, but that of course was coming from a much lower base. Whether we will be we can stop the slide would be the first, I suppose, ambition and hope that Irish beef producers would have, and then the second one is that maybe that we could start commencing an upward trend again. Certainly, much as I would hope and love to see it, I can't see a level of price increase next year anything like we experienced this year. It truly was one-off.
Well, Phelim, we'll say many thanks for joining us here, for all the times you've joined us in 2025, many times here, and we look forward to speaking to you again with your insights in 2026. We'll say happy Christmas to you, and thanks for speaking to us, Phelim.
Thanks, MJ. Happy Christmas to yourself, the team at Midlands Radio 3, and indeed all your listeners around the Midlands. Happy Christmas, and let's hope for a prosperous new year as well.
Very good. Many thanks, Phelim. Phelim O'Neill there from the Farmers Journal. And that is it for this evening's programme. Thanks to all my guests. I don't have time to go through them here. But thanks to everyone who joined me this evening. That is our last programme of 2025. And I want to say to you all to have a very happy Christmas. And I hope you have a lovely New Year as well. And lots of celebration with friends and families and loved ones. And a bit of R&R. Thank you for joining me. And I really mean that. Thank you for joining me here over the course of the entire year. And I look forward to taking a break for a couple of weeks and coming back in 2026. The show is repeated Sunday morning 7 a.m. until 8 a.m. Get us wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be back with you in 2026. Good night.